flow, but that also means it's a little harder to get the muscles warmed up. So I'm gonna start off with a drill that I like to do to help kick the hamstrings and glutes into gear. If you don't have blocks, that's fine. They're just optional. But I like to use the block as a sensory reminder to squeeze my heel in towards my glute. So start off in a tabletop position. Place your block between your heel and your thigh and use your inhalations to lift the knee up and then lower back down. That'll be 9, 8, 7. Keep squeezing your heel in. 5, 4, 3, 2. Can you feel it? I hope you can. 1, and change sides. And as you're going through these, in addition to squeezing your heel in towards your glute, you're also going to be lifting your belly away from the floor. Maybe think about keeping your back nice and flat like a tabletop for 10, 9, 8. Even squeeze the upper abs. 5, 4, 3. Keep squeezing. 2, 1, and release. Nice. You can set your blocks aside if you've been using them. Come back into your hands and knees pose. We're going to work the outer glutes and hips this time. So again, bring a nice little curl into the back. Think about drawing your rib points towards your hips. Use your inhalation to take your left leg back. Lift your heel as high as you can towards the ceiling without letting your hip open. Try to keep the hip down. And then draw the knee in towards the nose. We're going to do that 4 more times. Really work the lift of the leg. There you go. Try to keep even your little pinky toe pointed down towards the mat. Final time. Nice. Switch sides, 5 times on the other side. Maybe you start to feel your glutes warming up. Really work the lift of the leg. 3 more times. Try to keep the pinky toe down. I know I keep saying that, but it's so easy to let it lift. There, final time. Excellent. Take it into child's pose. Bring your knees wide, sinking your big toes together. Try to bring your sit bones back to your heels and then lower your forehead to the mat. Okay, now that the legs are feeling a little more loose, I feel better prepared to start actually moving. So come towards the front of your mat. Bring your feet so that they're about hip distance apart. Drop your tailbone as you start to gently lift your pelvic floor and lift your pubic bone. Inhale, bring the arms up, gaze up. Exhale, bend the knees, bring your ribs down to your thighs, forward fold. Let your head drop. Maybe shake your head from side to side, up and down. And while you're keeping your knees bent, bring your hands down to the mat and think about dragging your hands forward as you drop your nose towards your shins. Take 2 more breaths. And then inhale, bring yourself to a half lift. I like to use blocks, but you're more than welcome to bring your hands to your shins. And start to lengthen the legs. Drop your chest down between your shoulders. And start to traction your feet apart from one another. Make this a very active half lift. 2 more breaths here. Nice. Forward fold again. Awesome. This time, go ahead, bring your hands down to the mat. Step back with your right foot first. And start to lower your right knee down towards the mat. Now, where you place your back knee depends entirely on the openness of your hip. But I want you to come out of your posture just a little bit and think about bringing your pelvic bowl so that it's nice and level. From there, maybe you're able to sink a little bit deeper by pressing your hips slightly forward towards your left heel. Work here in this space, or go ahead and start lifting the arms. Take your gaze up. 3 breaths here. Draw the shoulder blades together and down the back. Final breath. Use your exhalation to take both hands down to the mat to frame your foot. And we're going to start to open the chest. So without dropping your right hip, open your chest towards the left side of the mat. You can stay here using your left arm for support or start to lift your left arm up towards the ceiling. About 3 to 5 breaths here. It's gonna wanna dip, that right hip is gonna wanna start to lower down towards the mat. Press firmly into your back foot to help keep your right hip lifted. And then start to release the hand down. Come up onto your back toes, step forward and forward fold. We'll repeat the same thing on the other side. So let's come up into our half lifts. I'll be using my blocks. Lengthen your spine, drop your chest down between your shoulders. Maybe think about holding a grapefruit between your chin and your collarbone. Traction the feet apart from one another, see if you can start firing up the glutes. And then fold again. Keep a gentle bend in the knees, final breath. This time we'll be taking our left foot towards the back of the mat and lowering the left knee down. Now, this is where we're going to bring our pelvic bowl more or less into a level position and really start to take your stretch into the front of your hip flexor. Work here with your hands on your hips for balance, or you can inhale, lift the hands, lift the gaze. Maybe introduce a slight back bend, just kind of bringing your heart open towards the ceiling without bringing your shoulders up to your ears. Final breath here. And then you can use your exhalation to take your hands down, frame your front foot. Again, without dropping your left hip, start to open your chest towards the right side of the mat, and maybe you open your wings. Draw your shoulder blades towards one another. Press your back knee and foot down to help keep your hip lifted, keeping that leg active. Final breath. Exhale, release it down. Come up onto your back toes, step forward, and this time we're going to come all the way up. So I like to reverse swan dive, bringing the arms around and up, gaze up, and then hands around and down. Awesome. We're going to take that variation to another level. So inhale, bringing arms up, gaze up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale to a half lift. Exhale, step back with the right foot first. Leave your right knee lifted and begin to make your way into your crescent pose. Level hips here. Maybe you open your heart to the ceiling. Maybe you draw the shoulder blades together as you lift the arms. Press down into the mound of your left big toe for stability. Exhale, take your right hand down towards the floor or the block. Whatever feels most supportive for you. Start to open your chest without dropping your right hip, and maybe open your wings. I think in most bodies the hip does drop some, but we're just sort of aiming to minimize that if we can. Exhale, take the hand down, step forward, and fold. We'll take it to the other side. This time stepping our left foot all the way towards the back of the mat, keeping that left knee lifted, find your crescent pose. Make sure that you're tracking your knee right over the center of your right foot, rather than letting that knee drift in towards the big toe side of the foot. Lift and activate your left thigh away from the floor. And then we'll take it into our twist. Really squeeze those shoulder blades together. Think about drawing your wrist directly over your shoulder. Final breath. Exhale to take both hands down to frame your front foot. Step forward, forward fold. We're going to reverse swan dive our way all the way up to standing. And then exhale, hands to heart. Nice. Okay, so let's start to bring our feet together. We want to make sure that our middle toes are pointed forward. So that may mean that your big toes touch, but your heels are not. Just want to make sure the middle of the foot faces forward. We're going to start to shift our weight over into our left foot as we lift the right foot away from the ground. Draw your ears to stack over your shoulders, shoulders to stack over your hips. For 3, 2, 1, take that right foot all the way to the back of the mat. Nice. We're going to rotate on the ball of that back foot, open our heart and our chest into warrior 2. Draw your shoulder blades together. Keep your upper body very active here. You want to keep the arms more or less level. Make sure that your back arm hasn't kind of dropped out of the party. Drag your feet towards one another. Anchor your ribs down towards your hips. 3, 2, 1. Start to straighten your front leg. Reach your fingertips all the way towards the front edge of the room, and then maybe you lower your left hand down to your thigh, your shin, the block, or the floor. If you want a little more core work, maybe you let your arm float. You'll take about 5 breaths here. Really press into the outer edge of your right foot. Keep that arch lifted and happy. Beautiful. Begin to make your way into an upright position. And you can take your hands to your hips. Walk your back foot in just a little bit so that you can rotate on the ball of the back foot. And in one step, or lots of little steps, come forward. Awesome. Same thing other side. So start to shift your weight into your right foot. Inhale, lift that right knee up. Take a few breaths here. Aim to get your knee at least as high as your hip. Notice if you're leaning forward to counter the weight, stack the ears, the shoulders, the hip, and your bottom heel. Final breath. Step all the way to the back of the mat. Begin to rotate on the ball of your back foot. Make your way into Warrior 2, side 2. Arms come parallel to the floor, palms down, but your shoulders, heart, and chest are open. Nice. Aim to get a 90-degree angle in that front knee if that feels comfortable on the knee, bringing your thigh parallel-ish to the mat. Notice if your chest and your rib cage are coming forward and you're like, drop the rib cage down towards your hip points. Keep your core active. About 2 more breaths here. Nicely done. We're going into triangle pose next, so we're going to start to straighten the front leg. Reach and extend your fingertips as far as you can over your leg, and then you can't reach anymore and you have lots of length in your side body. Then you can lower your hand to the floor or your block, or keep it floating for a little bit more core engagement. Notice what's happening in your back leg. Is your back leg awake? Maybe you lift your quad, lift that kneecap, keep it nice and active rather than being passive. For 3, 2, 1, inhale to come on up. Take your hands to your hips. Walk that back foot in just a little so that you can rotate on the ball of your back heel and step forward with 1 big step or lots of little steps. Awesome. We're going to keep building on that sequence. So shift your weight into your left foot. Inhale, right leg comes up. Maybe you stretch and extend the right leg. Squeeze your lower core muscles. That's going to help you lift the leg to keep it lifted. Use your exhale to step your foot back 3/4 of the way down your mat. Keep your right toes pointed towards the upper right-hand corner of your mat. We're coming into Warrior 1. Keep your hips facing forward as you lift the arms, bend deeply into your front knee. Notice what's happening in your back leg. If your back leg is doing less work than your front leg, really press that back foot down into the mat. Beautiful. We're going to take this into a bind. You're welcome to interlace the hands behind the back or take opposite elbows, whatever feels best on your shoulders. Squeeze the shoulder blades together wherever you are. Inhale, lift and lengthen the spine. Exhale, take your left shoulder to the inside of your left knee. Let your head drop down towards the mat. Maybe take your gaze to your back leg. Start to lift your arms towards the ceiling. Now, it doesn't matter if your arms are straight. It doesn't matter if your head is near your foot or not. You're just sort of extending in these directions. Final breath here, and we'll use our inhalation to start to lift ourselves back up. And we'll take it into side 2. Rotate on the ball of your back foot and step forward, please. This time we're going to start to shift the weight into the right foot first. Inhale to lengthen that left leg out. All 5 toes point up towards the ceiling. Lift your pelvic floor as if you were stopping a stream of urine. You want to lift that pelvic floor up. Press into your lower abdominals and then send that left leg towards the back of the mat 3/4 of the way. Find your Warrior 1, side 2. This is going to be different in everyone's body, so for some of us it may feel good to line up our heels. For others it'll feel good to have our feet on 2 different lanes of traffic, so to speak, so you have your heels staggered apart. Just sort of play around with the placement that feels good. And we're going to come into the bind next. Again, take the bind or opposite hand to opposite elbow, lift and extend. Exhale, fold forward. Start to bring your right sit bone in towards the center of the mat. If it started to drift, that's my hair. Keep your back leg active by lifting the kneecap and activating your quad. Take 2 more breaths. Awesome. Use your inhalation to start to lift you upright. Release the bind, take your hands to your hips, and step forward. So we're now going to come towards the center of the mat. So you can just step your left foot back, or right foot, whatever allows you to comfortably see your camera from where you are. And we're gonna take our feet wide. Maybe let your heels come a little bit wider than your toes. That feels good in some bodies. Inhale, lengthen your spine, maybe even lift your gaze. And then as you exhale, lead with your heart, hinge at your hips and come forward. Maybe you take your hands to the floor or to your blocks. And just pause here for a moment with a nice long spine, extending from the crown of the head all the way through the tailbone. I think that we sort of breeze through this half lift position and it can feel really good. Press into the outer edges of your feet to keep your arches lifted. Maybe traction your feet away from one another. You can maybe feel your sit bones spread. Use your next exhalation, forward fold. Maybe take your hands to the outside of your ankles and use that just to encourage your chest a little closer to your legs. Straighten the legs, or have a slight bend if that's more supportive for your hamstrings. Two more breaths here. Nice. Well, then take our hands to the mat, and I'm going to start to bend into my left knee first. But before I bend that knee, I'm going to take the left foot, angle it out about 45 degrees, and then take the bend. I'll come onto the heel of my right foot. Now, this will look different in everyone's body. Maybe you're able to bring your heel down to the floor. But that just depends on a lot of factors. Find what's comfortable for you. Maybe you keep your hands down, maybe you lift your hands. A few breaths here. Beautiful. We're going to take our hands down to the mat and switch sides. So sort of allow yourself to rock gently into the other direction. I don't quite think most of us will be warm enough yet to do that transition without the hands down, but if you want to, yeah, go ahead. Find a way to settle in. So for me, that has the heel grounded. For you, heel may be lifted. Find what works. Stay active in your upper body. Try to minimize rounding and collapsing towards the floor. Lift your heart. Press your hands together. And maybe even press your right arm into your right knee. It looks like I'm sitting, but I swear I'm not. One more breath here. And then we're going to inhale to lift ourselves back towards center. Start to heel toe your feet in so that they're just a little bit wider than your mat, or than your hips. And we're coming to goddess pose. I overshot this quite a bit, so I'm actually going to be a bit wider than that. We want to aim to get our knees and our ankles in line. Knees always tracking with the feet when we have our knees bent like this. Maybe you drop the tailbone just slightly. We're not going to overdo it with a tuck. We'll just drop the tailbone, bring the ribs and the hip points together. Arms can come into goalpost arms, leaving your elbows in line with your shoulders. And now, draw the shoulder blades together. Open the heart, lift the chest for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, oh, I hate this pose, 1, straighten the legs. And now you can bring your feet in a little bit more until they're just wider than your hips. Find for Malasana. So Malasana takes your sit bones down towards your heels. There's a couple of ways that you can work in this posture if your body's not doing that today. You can bring a block, take a seat on the block, and then use your elbows to press into your inner thighs and lift your heart. You're making the same shape, you just have the help of your block. So find what works for you. We'll take about 5 breaths here. Y'all feel that? I feel that. Lots of sitting in the chair makes this pose feel so delicious. Just switches it up a bit. Nice. All right, we're gonna go ahead and just take a seat. And we're gonna make our way into downward facing dog. I know you thought you were gonna get through a whole class without a single down dog. That's so funny. All right, so take your hands up there in front of your shoulders, tuck your toes under, begin to lift your hips, keep your knees bent maybe. See how it feels to keep your knees bent as you draw your chest a little bit closer to your thighs. Press into your arms, really the area where you can create an L with your index finger and your thumb. Make sure that's firmly grounded. And from there, if it feels good at this point in the practice to straighten your legs, go ahead. Bring your heels down towards the mat. They may touch, they may not. It's fine. Take about 5 breaths here. Beautiful. We're going to start to bring our feet together so that our big toes touch. And then we will use an inhalation to lift the right leg up. 3-legged dog. Keep all 5 toes pointed down towards the mat here. Don't cheat by opening the hips so you can lift the leg higher. Make the back body work for you for 3, 2, 1, and then start to round your back. Think about bringing your right knee towards your right wrist. Now, if that didn't happen in one movement, that's fine. Take as many little movements as you need. But we're going to bring our right knee so that it's just to the outside of the right hip. And maybe you start to bring your shin parallel-ish to the front edge of the mat. My hips aren't even feeling that right now, so I'm just going to keep it at a nice angle. What we do want to do, though, is keep both of our hip points forward, both of our shoulders forward. Use your hands to help lift your chest. And imagine that you can draw your chest, maybe, up towards the ceiling. I leave my back foot tucked under so that I can make sure I'm keeping my hips square. But if that's uncomfortable on your knee, feel free to untuck the toe. Take about 5 more breaths here. And then we'll start to forward fold, hinge at the hips. Maybe just take your hands in front of you, or you bring your elbows to blocks, or you can come all the way down to the floor if that's in your practice. Find what feels good on your hip without really pressing it, too much. We want to find maybe 70 to 80% of our effort here. Notice if all of your weight has shifted into that right hip. Start to shift the weight towards the center of the body. Take 2 more breaths here. And then use your hands to press yourself upright. I could sit in pigeon pose all day. That's my jam. All right. So back toes tucked under, and take it back to downward facing dog. Walk your dog, pedal your dog a little bit. See how one side of the body feels a little bit different than the other right now. And then we'll bring our big toes to touch behind us. Inhale, lift up that left leg. All 5 toes down towards the mat. Try to keep your weight evenly between both hands. Flex through that left foot. Keep it super active. Try not to be lazy with the lifted leg. And then use your exhalation to bring your left knee towards your left wrist. Maybe you start to bring your front shin parallel to the short edge of the mat. Maybe you don't. In either case, keep your hips and shoulders square. Use your arms to help lift and open the chest. About 5 to 7 breaths here, sort of depending on the pace. Just imagine that you could draw the left hip back and your right hip forward. And then at the same time, think about bending your left knee. You're not really going to change that position, but when you think about bending the knee and bringing your heel in a little bit closer, that helps to fire up your muscles and supports you in the posture rather than just sort of collapsing into it. Speaking of collapsing, let's take an exhale to forward fold. Nice long spine as you fold forward. So it's not about just like hinging and bringing your nose to the mat. Really try to extend. Maybe you have a slight curve in the low back if you're using a little bit more core engagement, but long spine is always a safe way to go. All right, let's come back. Come out of that before you get too comfortable. You're like, what are you talking about comfortable? It's pigeon pose. Take it back into downward facing dog. Bring the big toes together. Inhale to lift your right leg up. This time, satisfy the ego. Go ahead and open up that hip. Stack them on top. Take your top leg as far to the ceiling as you can. Bend into your right knee and start to bring your right heel towards your glutes. Notice if you've really come off kilter in your hands, try to keep your chest level here. So for this one, we're just twisting the lower half of the body, though there are variations where you take the full body into a twist. Take 2 more breaths. And then release. We'll take that right into the other side. Inhale, lift your left leg up. And let the hip open, let the hip stack. Bend the knee, squeeze your left heel in towards your glute. And keep your hips squared-ish. I find that if I press my heel, or let's say my right heel down, I get more of a stretch in my calf, but some people do feel better being up on their toes, so just notice what feels good. Final breath. Exhale, release. That's been a long hold in down dog. So let's take both knees down to the mat as about hip distance apart, and we're going to take our arms back. Let your forehead rest on the mat, or maybe even a block if that's more comfortable. Go ahead and come up. So we've been working on our hips a bit so that we can start to move ourselves towards elephant trunk pose. I just find that's it's a nice hip opener on days where I've just been sitting for a while. So use your hands to take them and move your flesh away from the bottom of the mat, but also start to like rotate your sits bones out a little. They do move just a smidgen when you do that. We're going to start by bringing our right knee in towards our chest. Give it a little squeeze, lift the spine, get nice and long. Start here if this is already a good position for you. You're welcome to also take that right foot into both of your hands. Think about bringing your shin parallel to the floor. Work here if that's good for you. If you want a little bit more, then maybe you start to take your right knee on the outside of the body towards your right armpit. I like to take a little bit of movement here, so just sort of gently encouraging the leg back and forth. Nice. And now, wherever you are, press your foot into your hands into your foot, lift your chest. So you're creating your own traction using your arms and your foot. For 3, 2, 1, and release it down. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So again, start by drawing the knee in towards the chest, or take both feet into the hand, or start to take that knee to the outer edge of your armpit, and you can work in stillness or movement, yogi's choice. We'll take about 5 to 7 breaths here. On one side, I can feel and hear sort of like a rubbing. So I'm very conscious of that when working in this posture. Sort of notice any sounds or feedback that your body is giving you. Nice. Before we come into elephant trunk pose on the side, we're going to work into omega. So we've kind of gotten the hips a little bit more open. I think omega is going to help bring us the rest of the way through. I like to use a block, but it's just a recommendation. It's not mandatory. Take your feet and bring them so that there's about a foot of space in between your heels. You want a nice, generous diamond. You're not going for cobbler's pose. We want to keep the legs gently bent and a space between. I like to place my block in between my heels because it just gives me something to squeeze into. Again, we're going to separate the sits bones, get the flesh out of the way. Take your hands to your shins or your ankles. Use an inhalation to lengthen your spine, tilt the pelvis forward. Exhale, fold. Now this gets into the hips in a really fun and exciting space for me. It's so fun and exciting. And by fun and exciting, I mean not fun and exciting at all. If you're using a block, keep pressing your heels into the block. Keep your feet active. Some of us may feel good folding, bringing the forehead in between the heels. That's not where I am in my life right now, so I'm just gonna rock right here for 7 breaths. Just let gravity do the work. If you're starting to ease forward, just accept that in your body. And then start to come on up. Now let's go for that elephant trunk. I'm going to start on the left side this time because it's a little bit easier to see. So we're going to bring ourselves into staff pose first, then step 1, then step 2, then step 3. If you're at step 3, maybe you release your left hand and bring it down to the mat. You want all of your fingers facing forward and keep them nice and spread wide. From there, I'm going to encourage my leg a little bit farther up towards my shoulder, really putting a deep bend into my left knee. Maybe you work here holding the foot for support, or you decide that you want to just let that leg hang. Wherever you are, notice the tendency is to let your chest collapse. Press your arm and leg together, help to open and lift the chest. For 5, 4, 3, I'm definitely shaking, 2, and 1. Lower down. That's the first phase. The second phase brings you into an arm balance, which is completely optional. I mean, it's the same shape, you're just lifting up on your arms. So let's go through those steps again. So step 1, 2, 3, 4, bring your hands in line with your hips, all 5 fingers forward. You want to really pay attention to what you're doing in your lifting hand. If your palm is completely flat, you're going to be compressing your carpal tunnel quite a bit. So think about gripping your mat with your fingertips, let your knuckles lift, let that little archway at the base of your wrist lift. I'm doing the same thing with my right hand, even though you can't see it. And we're going to use an inhalation to press the arms into the ground, straighten the arms, lift the hips. Now maybe you're here and you're like, this left leg isn't going anywhere. That's fine, let it sit there. Imagine that you're going to lift your right leg up. Play around with that for a few breaths. Curl your core muscles in towards your back. Lower down when you're ready. Same variations, other side. So let's start by taking the right leg in for 1, 2, 3. We're going to work this space first, taking about 5 breaths here. Oh, I think I said 7 the last time, so let's do 7. This is all about learning to create that contact point between your tricep and your leg. Also about lifting and opening the chest rather than collapsing forward. Just for this, it really helps with the hip opener, even though you do round forward in the arm balance. I think that's been 7 breaths. Release. Take a moment just to shake it out. Arm balance time. All right. 1, 2, 3. Careful attention to the hands. Squeeze the knee around the upper shoulder. Maybe lift the hips first. Maybe you lift the leg, curl in. So you know how I'm always talking about bringing your ribs towards your hip points? It's really going to serve you well here. Release whenever you're ready. Nice. Let's take a sweet little forward fold. So I'm going to be generous and take my feet about hip distance apart and take my chest forward between my shoulder blades, tilt my pelvis forward, and then just start to ease myself down. Nothing too deep, nothing too crazy. Wherever you are, sort of minimize the tendency to round your nose towards your knees and get like a super big arch in the back. We really are just sort of lifting the heart towards your feet. Long back, spine, long back. Beautiful. Come on up. All right, so for the wind down segment of this, I'm going to be using a strap. If you have a strap, go ahead and grab one. If you don't have a strap, you can use a belt, you can use a tie, or you can use absolutely nothing at all. It's just an option, but I find it does help me take this a little bit deeper. So I'm going to come lying down onto my back and bring your strap so that it comes right across the ball of your right foot. Press your right foot into the strap and begin to straighten and lengthen the leg. Now notice what's going on the left side. If your left side just like went to sleep the second the right side started working, go ahead and flex through that left foot and imagine that you could scissor the legs towards one another. That's going to help to fire up the hips as well as your hamstring and the lifted leg. Keep your quad engaged and happy. Starting to bring the energy down. Beautiful. We're going to take both ends of the strap into our left hand. Scoot your hips just maybe an inch towards your right and come into the twist. So I like to keep the leg almost in line with the hip and just rock onto the outer left hip. If your shoulders start to lift, come out of the posture a little bit so that you can ground both of your shoulders down into the mat. Beautiful. Inhale to lift it up. Bring your hips back towards center. Fun part. Imagine that you can bring your left big toe towards your right big toe towards your left ear. It's a very, very small movement. You want to keep both of your hips grounded, both of your sit bones sort of level to one another, and it's just a very minor stretch of your leg on the diagonal. Some people feel a ton of sensation on the outside of the calf, all the way down through the outer hip and thigh. And then other people don't. So this is great for some of us. Others don't necessarily need it, but I just want to offer that to you. About 3 more breaths. Nice. We'll start to come out and switch sides. So bend the knee into the chest, release the strap. All right, so let's come into side 2. So we will take our strap, bring it across the ball of the left foot. And just start off by lengthening the left leg up towards the ceiling. Press the foot into the strap, strap into the foot, keep the right leg active. And think about drawing your sit bones maybe a little bit closer to one another, keeping your hips level. About 3 to 5 breaths here. We're going to come into that twist next. So prepare yourself to switch your hips so that they're just about an inch towards the left side of the mat, and then you can let that left foot fall towards the right. Shoulders stay anchored onto the ground, rolling onto the outer right hip. Reach and extend your left leg towards the right side of your mat. Now I'm super close to the wall, so I'm just pressing my foot into the wall, and it actually feels really good. So if you're near a wall, maybe that's an option that you try. Just really let your energy descend here as we start to make our way closer and closer to Shavasana. Final breath here. Use your next inhalation to start lifting your leg up towards the ceiling. And we're going to come into that little stretch for the outer hip. So I like to take my thumb and like sort of press it into my hip flexor to get that out of the way of my hip joint. Have super strong hip flexors. I don't know what that's all about. But from there, take your left big toe, bring it towards your right ear. Keep the hips level, keep the glutes level, and just let the leg cross the body. Now, in a perfect world, I think my leg might be straight. It's probably bent right now. This is definitely my tighter side. Go ahead and sickle the foot on this side too. See how it feels to get that stretch into the outer calf. We're not bearing any weight on the foot, so if it's sickled inward, that's completely fine. Final breath. Use your inhalation to bring the foot up. Release it from the strap. And I'm going to take Shavasana in a constructive rest. So I'll let the knees come together, walk my feet towards the outer edge of the hips. I find this is really supportive on the low back and hips once I've done a lot of hip openers. But you're welcome to take classic Shavasana, extending the legs. But even while you're here, just let the weight of the legs fall into one another and support one another. Draw your shoulder blades down the back so that they're fully supported by the ground, and just bring your awareness to your breathing. All of your work is done. I hope that you're able to linger in Shavasana to your heart's content.